Hi guys, this is Shannon from Reptile and welcome back to our channel for another exciting build video. And this particular build video, we're showing you how we built the entire interior of this new enclosure. And before I try to describe it for you, I'm just going to show you some short clips just so you can decide whether this build video is for you. Now, if you did like the look of that build, we're going to go through this entire process step by step so you can build this yourself. I purchased this enclosure from Tanks by Congo and the craftsmanship is just beautiful. I like the sleek design. I wanted all of my enclosures to be black as well, and yeah, so I've got quite a few enclosures that look like this. They've also got glass sliding doors, which I recommend if you're having snakes in this enclosure. But now we're going to be starting the spray foaming process. And you can really use any type of spray foam from Bunnings because the animal isn't actually going to have any contact with this spray foam. So that's why I'm not using an expensive aquarium grade, pond grade spray foam. But anyway, as you can see, I'm building up the spray foam in two certain sections in this enclosure. And this is where I want the two caves to be. So I'm spraying it, waiting for the spray foam to set, spraying it, and I keep doing that process. But now we're doing the side walls of the enclosure. And again, I'm just spray foaming a layer and that I'll carve out later. But the carving process has begun and we're starting off with one of the largest caves in this enclosure. And you'll see as I'm carving into this particular cave, we're going to start to see some of the spray foam not set right in there. So if this does happen to you, just wait, go to another section to carve and it will eventually set and then you can carve it out. It'll just save your knife, otherwise that spray foam will get really stuck to it. But the type of design I'm going for this particular build is, I guess, a granite type design, dark rock, sort of slaty actually. And yeah, I've sort of, the rock, how I've designed it is going on an angle. This will allow the snake to have really good ledges to climb. It'll also assist in shedding as there's tight gaps as well that it can rub its body through that. And it just gives it a lot of enrichment through texture. And this is the other cave that I'm working on. This cave is a little bit more open because it's going to be close to the heat lamp, which the heat lamp is going to allow that cave to heat up and be warmer than the other cave. As well as that big section in the middle that's a basking spot will be nice and toasty, but so will that cave be a bit of a warmer option. Because in my enclosures, I like to play around for it to have a wide variety of temperature gradients to mimic the wild and just to give them lots of options to thermoregulate. So this is why I'm sort of doing the design like this. Now it's really important when you're carving, you carve the entire shiny top layer of spray foam off. The reason being, if you leave that top shiny layer on, the grout won't adhere to it. It'll just flake off. But anyway, this is what it looks like carved. You can start to see my vision coming to life a little bit more. So this is what it looks like when you've put in the effort of carving. Now we're getting straight into the grouting. Now with this particular grout, I use the Davco sanitized grout, and I'm actually using all the colors from my wardrobe just to use up all of my building stock that I've got. So this was after, I think this was the second layer of grout where the color was a bit more consistent. But I think I did about 4 layers over the entire thing. And then after that, I sort of might have done an extra couple of layers sort of on the bottom of the caves, on certain ledges that might get a lot of use out of them. But definitely I'd recommend a minimum of 4 layers of grout just because you want this piece to last. And once that grout, I guess, is almost dry but a little bit damp to the touch, is best for carving. And I do like to carve the strata layers into the rock. So this is sort of what you would naturally see out in the wild. I am going to be adding more grout over the top of this in certain sections for texture and colour variance, but I just thought I'll carve it in case there's certain sections I don't add that grout and I want there to be those strata layers for it. So it's simple, you can use a knife, anything sharp or pointy really to carve. Now I'm going in with the light grey sanitized grout and I'm really dabbing it on to create texture in certain areas and to give it a bit of colour variance as well. But now we're going to go in with the spray painting, and super cheap option, just squirt one of these tubes of paint into a spray bottle, fill it up with water, leave a couple centimetre gap at the top of the water bottle so it just allows you to shake it and for it all to mix up. And this is really good to, I guess, create depth and spray in the cave, spray in certain cracks so it looks like the piece is going further back, almost into the dark abyss. And it can sort of help tricking your eyes to make it look like it's going quite far back, and also give it a bit of a natural look as well. And it's quick, it's easy. This whole process only takes about 5 minutes or so. And I'm just focusing on the areas that I think would be naturally dark or that I want, when your eyes look at it, to go further back. Now it's really important, you need to wait for this spray painting to be dry before you do the next step, which is the dry brushing. So this is where you need a clean paintbrush. You need some white acrylic paint. You dab a little bit of paint on your brush. You can wipe some of the paint off on a bit of paper and then you brush it onto the rock. And it's just going to give it like a worn effect. So like the wind, the rain has been ripping at this piece for thousands of years. And it creates, I guess, more colour variance in it. It allows for those textures to be picked up as well. And it gives it a more of a natural appearance, like there could be minerals on the rock. And it's simple. And to be honest, this sort of colour tone you're seeing, this colour palette for this particular build is one of the easiest to do. So if you don't really enjoy the painting process, the detailing, I'd probably go with a colour scheme like this. This type of rock, because it's really easy to do. You don't have to spend a lot of time on the detailing. But this is what it looks like after the painting process is complete. And now we want to lock all of that in. So we're going to go over with some waterproofing. Now this is just the clear waterproofing from Cromlin. And it's good because it allows you to keep this enclosure extremely sanitary. It's easy to wipe with a cloth and really easy to clean poo off. The only thing is it creates a shiny appearance. So it takes away from it looking so natural, like natural rock. That's the only downfall. I wish there could be a waterproofing that had a bit more of a matte effect, not a shiny appearance. So that's the one downside you get. But I did about 4 layers of waterproofing over the entire piece and then an extra couple in the cave areas on ledges where the animal's going to poo. But now we're doing the decorating, which is quite exciting. Let the waterproofing completely dry, and we're going in with some of that cellies to secure the plants in place. And then also we've got some plants that I want to come out of the ground as well. And I'm just securing it with rocks to create almost like a weight. and I'm using that silicone again, Sally's silicone, which is aquarium grade, safe for animals. Then I'm putting some substrate over the top just to hide it, and so it blends in, and you'll see how it'll blend in once we sort of put everything together. But the weight's important, otherwise your animals are just going to knock the plants all over. But now I want to create a matching water hole, and I want it to be removable, just in case if I want to change it up in future and it's just a lot easier to clean. I can just take it out, clean it, rather than it being fixed. But here we go, we're going in again with some of that spray foaming. I've used those bowls to create some sort of a hole. Now I am using quite a lot of spray foam. You probably don't need to use this much. You could be a little bit more precise with it. But I did actually save all of this spray foam I cut off for builds that I'm actually doing in the future. So nothing was wasted, which was quite good. I do like to keep certain building materials as it's not cheap, the spray foam in Australia. But here we go, we're carving that water hole out, and I wanted to make it, I guess, not so uniform looking shape. And I want to match it with the design of the enclosure. So again, a slaty looking rock, harsh edges, sort of harsh slopes on diagonals, that type of thing. But also with the pond, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't like, I guess, thick walls or a thick base of foam that would use up areas where there could be water instead. So I wanted to create sort of thin edges, a thin foam base, and this means after I put all the layers of grout on, there's still going to be quite a bit of depth to this pond. And I wanted it to be quite a big pond, and this will just allow for humidity to go quite nicely, as part of the pond can be placed underneath where the heat lamp is to create a bit of evaporation, and to add to the humidity of the enclosure a little bit. But here you go, you can start to see the pond coming to life a little bit, and it is really good to go for a bit of an abnormal shape, as lots of ponds, water holes are not a uniform circle. And now we're going in with the grout, so I'm using black sanitized grout, and for the entire thing I used about 4 or 5 layers, but in the pond bit itself I think I used about 7 layers of grout, just so I could get a really nice smooth surface. But now we're doing some carving again, like we did with the main part of the enclosure, just to keep it uniform and so it matches the rest of the build. But I'm also using the light grey grout that I mixed in with some of the black grout, to create a bit of a darker grey, just to get some different colour variants on this before I go in with the dry brushing once all of this is dried. And now we're doing the dry brushing. So again, like before, just the white paint, you need to make sure the grout is completely bone dry before you do this. And again, it's just going to make it match the rest of the enclosure, give it that worn effect, make the textures pop. And now we're doing the waterproofing. I always like to flip the piece over and do the underside first. And I think there's about 4 layers on that underside. And then I do the rest of the waterproofing. And I do another 4 layers over the entire part of this. But then inside the pond itself, there's probably about 8 layers of waterproofing. And this is just going to give it longevity, make it last, hold up to being cleaned, rinsed, all that type of stuff. So I really do like to do extra layers in the pond. Now this is what I'm using for my thermostat, and this will just regulate the enclosure just to make sure the enclosure doesn't get too hot and overheat my animal, which can be the case if you've got a wooden enclosure that holds heat nicely. And what I'm doing is I'm just threading, this is the probe, so I'm putting the probe in a good spot that's going to pick up quite nicely the basking temperature. And I'm just securing that with, again, the Sally's silicone, which is reptile safe, it's aquarium safe. That's a particular favourite of mine that I like to use. So the probe is all secured, the heat lamp is plugged into that thermostat, and disregard the temperature, I've only just turned this light on, but it gives, even just with that bulb, depending on the temperature of your room, you'll need a 50 to 100 watt heat bulb to give it the nice temperatures you need for a children's python or any of the antarrhesias really. But now the enclosure is starting to come together, and now it's time for the substrate, and this substrate really does pop with this enclosure. I use this instead of the reptile ones just because it does so much better with moisture. It doesn't mold, it doesn't smell, and it creates a beautiful environment as well. So these guys can come from humid areas as well, but this is great to get humidities of 50% or more. I use this for lots of my reptiles. I really do like that substrate product, personal preference. But now we're filling up the water hole, and this did take a bit of time, so it's really cool to see it all come together. You can add some leaves as well if you want to create a bit more enrichment, texture, make it look more rainforesty. We're putting the glass doors in as well. It really is all coming together. And here's beautiful Pearl. This is her enclosure, and it's a similar design to her old enclosure that she was in Darwin, but I think this one looks a lot better. It looks more natural. Also, the caves are a lot larger. The basking spots are in better spots. Having a cave that heats up nicely, having a cave that's cooler, but also that ground surface too is massive because the rock is being carved all the way back. So the surface area is still the same size of the bottom of the enclosure. So a lot of roaming space there. And then all of the vertical space in the caves, the ledges. So we have increased the surface area of this enclosure. So there's not a lot of dead space. So you can see she can fully outstretch her whole body in this enclosure, which is a good guide. You want your snake to be able to outstretch its body in its enclosure. And she's checking out her lovely pond there, and she's having a good drink. So that was really exciting to see. And I think she's really loving this enclosure. I monitored her over a few days, and I snapped some beautiful footage of her in every single spot of the enclosure. So it really is good to see her using it, utilizing all of these caves, ledges, and it does provide a lot of enrichment. So this design has to be one of my favorites for the children's pythons, just for temperature variance, hiding spots, using that space beautifully. Yeah, it's really nice to see your animal enjoying the enclosure. And Pearl is a beautiful snake. She's actually a marble children's python. And they've got to be one of my favourites. I do love the colour of the marble children's pythons, and she's an absolute sweetheart, really friendly, and she eats like a champion. She's never missed a meal. But yeah, there is the enclosure. Thank you so much guys for watching this video. I really do hope it not only gave you the inspiration to do a build like this, but also all the information you need. And if you did like the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe as well. It'll really help our little channel out, and we'll see you in the next build video. Bye guys.